When men fail, they often blame fortune, enemies, or circumstance. Yet the Stoics would insist that the greatest saboteur of success is not outside, but within. It is the untrained mind, restless, fearful, indulgent, distracted. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. The tragedy is that most men invert this truth. They fight endlessly against externals while neglecting the one fortress that matters, their own reason. The result is self-sabotage. What does it mean to sabotage your success? It means allowing your thoughts to work against you instead of for you. It means letting fear paralyze decisions, letting desire scatter focus, letting excuses delay action. Epictetus told his students, "It is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." The failure is not in the world, but in our interpretation. When the mind interprets obstacles as impossibilities, when it confuses discomfort with danger, it chains itself long before any enemy does. Self-sabotage often begins invisibly. A man intends to rise early, yet his thoughts whisper, "Sleep a little longer." He intends to speak truth, yet his mind cautions, "Remain silent, it is safer." He intends to pursue virtue, yet his imagination lures him with pleasures. Each time, the sabotage seems small, harmless. But like drops of water hollowing stone, repeated indulgence erodes character. Seneca compared it to sickness, not sudden, but gradual, unnoticed, until the body collapses. So too, the mind corrodes itself until success becomes impossible because the enemy sits already in command. The Stoics believed that the mind could be trained like an athlete's body. Discipline, reflection, and philosophy were the exercises. To neglect this training was to live as a slave to impulse. Marcus Aurelius scolded himself in his journals when he strayed, "Stop allowing your mind to be a slave, tossed by passions, jerked by fate." He knew the enemy was not Rome's politics or barbarian armies, but the thoughts that could make him cowardly, vain, or lazy. This awareness is the beginning of freedom. Self-sabotage also takes the form of endless postponement. The mind convinces itself that tomorrow is safer than today, that preparation must always precede action. Seneca warned, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." The man who exists postpones forever, building castles in thought while his days vanish. The man who lives acts now, knowing that no perfect moment will come. The sabotaging mind waits for clarity. The disciplined mind creates clarity through action. But why do we sabotage ourselves? Because the mind, left unchecked, seeks comfort over growth. It confuses the pleasant with the good, the easy with the right. Epictetus scolded those who wanted to improve without effort. No great thing is created suddenly. Success, whether in philosophy, work, or virtue, requires pain, repetition, endurance. The sabotaging mind resists this, whispering that comfort is life's aim. Yet, as the Stoics insist, comfort is decay. Only discipline produces freedom. Therefore, the first Stoic insight is this: your greatest obstacle is not the world but your own thoughts. If you are not vigilant, your mind will become the traitor within your walls, opening gates to fear, desire, and delay. But if you train it, if you examine judgments, confront fears, and discipline impulses, then the mind becomes your ally, the very engine of success. Marcus Aurelius carried an empire not because the world was kind, but because his mind was steady. You too must begin where he began, within. Fear is the mind's oldest trick, and perhaps its most destructive. It sabotages long before failure arrives, whispering doubts, inflating risks, shrinking confidence. The Stoics warned that if you do not master fear, it will master you. Epictetus told his students bluntly, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." He meant that fear lives not in events, but in our judgments of them. A storm is only wind and rain. Death is only the dissolution of matter. poverty is only the absence of possessions. It is the mind that paints these things as unbearable, and in doing so, the mind becomes its own tyrant. Consider how many lives are left unlived because of fear's tyranny. A man longs to pursue a vocation he loves, but the thought of failure freezes him in mediocrity. Another wishes to speak truth, but the dread of rejection seals his lips. Another dreams of building something lasting, but the thought of ridicule makes him surrender before he begins. In each case, the obstacle is not reality, but imagination. Seneca captured this well. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. It is the mind rehearsing catastrophe that ruins opportunity. The imagined pain is worse than the real, and so men betray themselves at the very threshold of success. Fear sabotages most cruelly because it often masquerades as wisdom. The cautious voice whispers, "Wait until you are ready. Don't risk too much. Better to be safe." But the Stoics recognize this for what it is, cowardice disguised as prudence. Marcus Aurelius rebuked himself daily not to let such whispers govern his reign. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. If death could strike at any moment, what could be more foolish than postponing life because of fear? Safety is an illusion. Delay is the most dangerous risk of all. Yet the Stoics did not teach us to deny fear. They acknowledged its natural presence. The difference lies in mastery. Courage, they said, is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to obey it. A soldier who trembles yet marches forward is brave. A man who feels anxiety but still speaks the truth is courageous. Epictetus compared this to a sailor facing a storm. His body may quake, his face may pale, but if he steers the ship with steady hands, he has conquered fear. To exist is to surrender to trembling. To live is to steer anyway. How then do we master fear? The Stoics prescribed reason as the medicine. When fear arises, break it apart with questions. What exactly do I fear? What is the worst that can happen? Is it within my control? Most fears evaporate under such light. If the feared outcome is outside your control, why waste your soul in anxiety? If it is within your control, then act with courage, for delay only feeds fear. Marcus practiced this method constantly, reducing every terror into its simplest parts. Death was dissolution, pain was sensation, criticism was sound in the air. When reduced, fear loses its monstrous shape. But reason alone was not enough. The Stoics also practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Seneca urged imagining poverty, exile, illness, even death, so that the mind would not be surprised when hardship arrived. He who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than necessary, he wrote. By rehearsing adversity, the Stoic robbed fear of its sting. The sabotaging mind avoids such thoughts, pretending misfortune will never arrive. Then, when it does, the untrained man collapses. The disciplined mind, having walked the path in imagination, greets hardship as a familiar adversary. Fear also hides under the mask of perfectionism. Many postpone action, claiming they are preparing, when in truth they are afraid to fail. Epictetus mocked this hesitation. How long will you wait before you demand of yourself the best? The perfect moment does not exist. To act today, even imperfectly, is Stoic courage. To wait endlessly is cowardice dressed in diligence. The sabotaging mind whispers, "Not yet," until life itself says, "Too late." Another subtle mask of fear is conformity. People silence their own reason to follow the crowd, terrified of ridicule or exclusion. They sabotage themselves by living another's script. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the crowd's approval is meaningless. It is possible to be at once a man full of self-respect and a friend of mankind, and yet to oppose the opinions of the crowd. To exist is to fear mockery more than wasted life. To live is to endure mockery with calm, knowing that truth is worth more than applause. We see fear's tyranny in modern life just as clearly as the Stoics did in Rome. How many remain silent in meetings because they fear looking foolish, only to betray their own ideas? How many never write, paint, speak, or build because they fear rejection, leaving their talents to rot unexpressed? How many endure toxic relationships because they fear solitude more than indignity? Fear sabotages success by making the pain of imagined loss greater than the joy of real growth. And so, men die having never risked the life they were given. The Stoic cure is to invert the fear. Fear not rejection, but wasted potential. Fear not failure, but cowardice. Fear not hardship, but the paralysis of never beginning. Marcus Aurelius, facing wars and plague, reminded himself that fortune might strip everything, power, wealth, health, but could never strip virtue. If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. To live is to reclaim this power. To exist is to surrender it. Thus the second Stoic insight is this: beware the tyranny of fear, for it is the mind's most cunning saboteur. It magnifies shadows, invents dangers, disguises weakness as prudence, and postpones life until it is gone. The Stoic defeats fear by reason, by preparation, and by courageous action. Fear will always whisper, but you need not obey. As Seneca said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Do not let imagination become your tyrant. Let reason and courage reclaim the throne. One of the most subtle ways the mind sabotages success is by clinging to illusions of control. The untrained mind insists that everything must bend to its will, that certainty must precede action, that outcomes must be guaranteed before effort begins. This attachment, born of fear and vanity, becomes a chain. For when the world refuses to obey, frustration swells, discouragement hardens, and action ceases. Epictetus, who knew slavery in body but freedom in mind, shattered this illusion with a single principle: some things are in our control and others are not. Those who confuse the two condemn themselves to failure long before fortune does. The mind sabotages you when it demands mastery over what no man can possess: other people, the tides of fortune. A businessman launches a venture and is crushed not by the effort itself, but by outrage that customers behave unpredictably. A student abandons study because the outcome of success feels uncertain. A man in love grows bitter because the affection he offers does not guarantee affection in return. In each case, the sabotage is not the event, but the expectation. The Stoics insisted outcomes are never in your control, but intentions, efforts, and judgments always are. Seneca described this with clarity: we are tormented more by our opinions of things than by the things themselves. When the mind believes it must control everything, every setback feels catastrophic. Yet the setback is only natural. It is the false expectation that multiplies its sting. Imagine a sailor who rages against the sea for having waves. He wastes his strength in fury instead of using it to steer. So too, the mind, when enslaved by illusion, exhausts itself in resistance instead of action. Marcus Aurelius carried this lesson as emperor, surrounded by conspiracies, wars, and plague. He could not command victory, loyalty, or health, but he could command himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is no abstract comfort. It is the essence of survival. While others collapsed under frustration, Marcus lived with calm. He knew the only true sabotage was to neglect his own reason in pursuit of what could never be mastered. The sabotaging mind thrives on the illusion that control equals security. It whispers, "You cannot begin until you are sure. Do not act until the plan is perfect. Do not risk until certainty is absolute." But certainty is an illusion. Life is flux. Fortune is unstable. Death is always near. The Stoic embraces this instability as the natural order. To live, said Epictetus, is to row in a sea not your own. You control the oar, not the storm. To demand mastery over the storm is to sit idle in the harbor, waiting forever for calm that will never last. This waiting is sabotage disguised as prudence. How then do we break free of this illusion? First, by distinguishing clearly what belongs to us and what does not. Epictetus divided life into two realms: what is up to us, our judgments, desires, actions, and what is not up to us, fortune, other people, reputation, death. To confuse these is madness. When your mind spends itself on the uncontrollable, you waste both energy and peace. When you anchor yourself in what is yours, you become unshakable. This discipline of focus transforms frustration into freedom. Second, the Stoics practice acceptance. Seneca reminded Lucilius that the wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means acting fully where you have power, while refusing to let disappointment in outcomes corrode your will. Success, for the Stoics, is measured not in results, but in alignment with virtue. Did you act justly, bravely, wisely, like with discipline? If so, you succeeded regardless of what fortune decreed. The sabotaging mind insists on applause. The disciplined mind rests in integrity. Third, the Stoics warned against rehearsing imaginary catastrophes beyond our control. The anxious mind pictures every possible failure, mistaking imagination for prophecy. Seneca mocked this habit. He suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary. To live in dread of what you cannot command is to die many deaths before the final one. The disciplined man prepares, but he does not obsess. He trains his mind to act when action is possible and to release when it is not. The modern world reveals this sabotage daily. Think of the worker paralyzed by economic uncertainty, refreshing news feeds endlessly instead of honing skills. Think of the artist who never shares his work because he cannot control how it will be received. Think of the lover who clings so tightly to another's freedom that he suffocates the very bond he fears to lose. In each case, success is sabotaged not by circumstance, but by the illusion that control must precede peace. The Stoic cuts this knot by returning always to the question, is this mine or not? If it is not mine, I release it. If it is mine, I act with courage. Marcus Aurelius faced plague in Rome, a horror beyond his command. Many despaired, believing life had no meaning if safety could not be assured. Marcus instead turned inward. Do not look outside for peace. Within is the spring of good, and it will flow always if you dig. He accepted that the plague could take his body, but refused to let it corrupt his soul. In doing so, he transformed helplessness into mastery. The sabotaging mind sees only what is lost. The disciplined mind sees always what remains. This shift also liberates ambition. When you release outcomes, you are free to act boldly. Fear dissolves, for fear is always tied to results beyond control. Epictetus urged his students, do not ask that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will go on well. This radical acceptance turns even failure into fuel. For if the outcome is not yours, then the only question is whether you acted rightly. With this clarity, the mind ceases sabotage and becomes a partner in courage. Thus, the third Stoic insight is this: beware the illusion of control, for it is a prison built by the mind itself. To exist under this illusion is to waste life in frustration, waiting for certainty that never comes. To live is to act with power where you have power, and to release all else with dignity. Success is not guaranteed by controlling the world, it is guaranteed by mastering yourself. As Epictetus taught, freedom is not in ruling fortune, but in ruling judgment. To forget this is sabotage. To remember it is freedom. Few things sabotage success as efficiently as excuses. The mind, when left untrained, is endlessly inventive in justifying delay, weakness, and avoidance. Seneca remarked that it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare, it is because we do not dare that things are difficult. Yet, instead of facing this truth, most men spin comforting lies. The timing is not right. I don't have enough resources. I'll begin tomorrow. These excuses feel protective, but they are prisons built out of words. The danger of excuses lies in their plausibility. Fear is often obvious, illusions sometimes clear. But excuses mimic reason, wearing the mask of logic while serving cowardice. Epictetus warned against this deception. If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. What he meant is that the mind prefers the comfort of clever reasoning over the humiliation of honest effort. Better, the mind says, to appear wise in postponement than foolish in failure. This is sabotage disguised as sophistication. Excuses also appeal to fairness. We tell ourselves, others had better opportunities. My circumstances are harder. If I had their advantages, I too would succeed. Marcus Aurelius dismissed this thinking as poison. He reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. To blame circumstance is to forget this power. Excuses place success always outside yourself, on luck, on resources, on others, while Stoicism insists that the root of success lies in your judgment and actions. Consider how excuses operate in daily life. The student delays study by claiming he needs the perfect environment. The worker delays effort by insisting the market is unfair. The artist delays creation by believing inspiration must strike first. In each case, the excuse feels reasonable, even noble. But underneath lies fear, fear of effort, fear of rejection, fear of failure. The excuse soothes the ego in the moment, but corrodes the soul in the long run. Seneca called this self-deception the worst betrayal, for the liar who deceives himself loses even the capacity for correction. The Stoics taught that excuses must be met with ruthless honesty. Epictetus urged his students to test every thought. Is this in my control or not? If the obstacle is external, then excuses change nothing. If the obstacle is internal, then excuses are surrender. Marcus rebuked himself sharply whenever he began to complain. Why do you delay? What is left for you to guard? You carry within you the power to act rightly now. This self-confrontation is the Stoic cure. The sabotaging mind thrives in comfort. The disciplined mind thrives in truth. Another danger of excuses is that they compound. One excuse feeds the next until life itself becomes a chain of postponements. You delay today because you are tired, tomorrow because you are busy, next year because you are older. Suddenly, decades vanish, and you wonder why success never arrived. Seneca warned, it is not that life is short, but that we waste much of it. Excuses are the machinery of waste, grinding down time into nothingness while whispering that there is always more. Modern life provides endless material for excuses. We blame technology, politics, parents, employers, or society. But Marcus Aurelius, emperor of one of history's most chaotic periods, refused such indulgence. Surrounded by war, plague, and betrayal, he wrote, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others." He refused to excuse inaction by pointing outward. If the emperor of Rome could not excuse himself, why should we? The excuse is not in the world, it is in the mind. The Stoics also understood that excuses are seductive because they reduce responsibility. To say, "I cannot," feels easier than to say, "I will not." The first casts you as a victim, the second reveals your choice. But Epictetus insisted that freedom lies in owning your choices. If you admit, "I will not," then you confront yourself honestly. If you hide behind "I cannot," then you enslave yourself to illusions. Excuses, therefore, are chains we choose to wear. How can we break this cycle? The Stoics advised beginning small. Do not wait to conquer all excuses at once. Begin with one act today. Rise when you said you would. Speak when fear urges silence. Act when delay tempts. Each small victory trains the mind to resist excuse. Seneca praised such daily progress. Day by day, we must build, as the bricklayer builds, one by one. Success is built not in dramatic gestures, but in daily resistance to sabotage. The comfort of excuses is perhaps the most dangerous comfort of all. Pain reveals itself honestly. Excuses smile while they strangle. They allow you to believe you are rational while keeping you small. To live stoically is to strip excuses of their disguise and see them for what they are, cowardice clothed in language. Once you see this, you can no longer accept them. Thus, the fourth Stoic insight is this: beware the comfort of excuses, for they are the velvet chains of self-sabotage. To exist is to excuse endlessly, to trade decades for sentences that sound wise but mean nothing. To live is to confront excuses with honesty, to reject delay, to act now. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Success begins the moment excuses end. Now some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day" so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. If fear chains the mind and excuses lull it into passivity, then unchecked desire scatters it into 1,000 fragments. The Stoics saw desire not merely as natural longing, but as a force that, if left untrained, sabotages the pursuit of real success. For what is success without clarity? And what becomes of clarity when the mind chases endlessly after pleasures, possessions, or approval? Seneca warned of this restlessness. No man is free who is a slave to the body. He meant that one who obeys every appetite, whether for comfort, wealth, or admiration, cannot live wisely, for his reason is always hostage. Desire sabotages success by scattering focus. A man sets out to achieve something noble, but at the first glitter of an easier prize, he abandons the path. Another begins discipline, but the lure of indulgence diverts him. Another speaks of virtue, but the desire for applause twists his words into performance. Marcus Aurelius scolded himself repeatedly for this weakness. "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others," he wrote, referring not to compassion, but to obsession with reputation. To live by others' applause is to live enslaved, for what you pursue is no longer your own reason, but the fickle judgment of the crowd. The mind sabotages you when it convinces you that happiness lies just beyond the next acquisition. One more possession, one more promotion, one more comfort, and then you will be at peace. Yet as the Stoics observed, desire has no natural end. It is a fire that grows with feeding. Epictetus mocked those who postpone virtue for the pursuit of wealth. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The sabotaging mind always wants more. The disciplined mind wants rightly. Desire also sabotages by confusing pleasure with good. We often believe that what feels pleasant must be valuable. But the Stoics drew a sharp line. Pleasure is indifferent, virtue is good. A meal may please the body, but it does not make the soul just. A crowd's cheer may please the ego, but it does not make the mind wise. When the mind chases pleasure as if it were the highest good, it sabotages true success by sacrificing integrity for indulgence. Seneca condemned this with severity. Pleasure, unless it has been kept within bounds, will enslave us. Consider how modern life amplifies this sabotage. Advertisements whisper constantly, buy this, wear this, eat this, watch this, your life will be complete. Social media fuels endless comparison, making desire infinite and peace impossible. The untrained mind, exposed to this noise, darts endlessly from craving to craving. Success dissolves not in failure but in distraction. The Stoic, however, filters desire through reason. He asks, will this bring lasting peace? Will it strengthen virtue? Will it train courage? If not, he dismisses it as noise. Yet the Stoics did not preach denial of all desire. They acknowledged that natural desires, food, shelter, companionship are part of life. What they condemned was slavery to them. The difference lied in mastery. To eat because you must is natural. To live for eating is slavery. To enjoy reputation is fine. To live for reputation is ruin. Marcus Aurelius enjoyed his duties as emperor, but reminded himself not to be consumed by them. Do not waste what is left of your life in dreaming of the future or clinging to the past. His success lay in anchoring desire to what is present and virtuous. Another way desire sabotages is through impatience. The mind desires results instantly, refusing the slow work of discipline. Seneca scorned this impatience, writing, "Nothing great is created suddenly. To demand success without endurance is to sabotage it before it begins." Desire whispers that shortcuts are possible. Wisdom replies that shortcuts lead nowhere worth going. The Stoic understands that success is not seized in a single leap, but cultivated in steady steps. Unchecked desire also corrodes relationships. The man who desires approval manipulates others instead of loving them. The man who desires wealth uses others as tools instead of treating them as brothers. The man who desires status competes where he should cooperate. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that human beings were made for cooperation, not rivalry. Desire twists this truth, making every bond transactional. In the pursuit of desire, we lose not only success, but humanity itself. How then do we train desire? The Stoics prescribed voluntary restraint. Epictetus urged practicing denial. Go without luxury, fast from indulgence, reject unnecessary pleasures. By proving to yourself that you can live with less, you remind the mind that desire is not necessity. Seneca practiced this himself, eating coarse bread and wearing rough clothing to remind himself that fortune's gifts were not essential to life. This training weakens desire's power to sabotage. When you have learned to need little, you cannot be ruled by much. The Stoics also recommended reframing desire. Instead of craving possessions or approval, desire virtue. Long for wisdom as others long for wealth. Hunger for courage as others hunger for fame. This reorientation transforms desire from sabotage into strength. For what you pursue shapes what you become. As Marcus wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you desire justice, wisdom, discipline, then your life will reflect them. If you desire only pleasure, applause, and comfort, then your life will reflect their emptiness. The sabotaging mind says, happiness lies in more. The Stoic mind says, happiness lies in enough. This enough is not mediocrity but freedom. The freedom to act without chains, to live without craving, to succeed without being enslaved to the fruits of success. When desire is mastered, success becomes possible. When desire rules, success dissolves into endless hunger. Thus, the fifth Stoic insight is this: beware the distraction of desire, for it scatters focus, enslaves judgment, and makes peace impossible. To exist is to crave endlessly, mistaking appetite for meaning. To live is to master desire, to redirect it toward virtue, to practice gratitude for what is already in hand. As Epictetus taught, wealth is not measured by possessions, but by freedom from want. Do not let desire sabotage your success by keeping you always hungry. Instead, learn the Stoic art of contentment, and success will no longer be something you chase. It will be something you live. If desire scatters the mind outward toward pleasures, then comparison chains it to the opinions of others. The Stoics saw comparison as one of the most corrosive forms of self-sabotage, for it shifts the measure of success from inner virtue to external applause. Seneca scorned this tendency. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. And what drives craving more than the sight of another who seems richer, more admired, more fortunate? The sabotaging mind whispers, "You are behind. Others are advancing faster. You must prove yourself by their standards." In chasing this phantom race, you lose clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to envy other men's success, for it often came at the cost of peace. "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others," he wrote, "when you cannot bring your mind to rest by turning it inward." To live by comparison is to exile yourself from your own path. Comparison sabotages success, because it breeds either envy or arrogance. If others seem ahead, you feel diminished. If others seem behind, you feel inflated. In both cases, your worth is borrowed, fragile, unstable. Epictetus insisted that true freedom lies in independence from such measures. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Improvement, for him, was internal, a sharpening of character, not a contest of appearances. The mind sabotages itself when it ties ambition to applause. Imagine an artist who abandons his style because it does not please critics, or a leader who sacrifices justice for popularity. They may gain recognition, but they lose themselves. Seneca warned of this slavery to the crowd. What is required is not to be with the crowd, but to free yourself from the crowd. True success is living by reason, not by reputation. Modern life multiplies this danger. Social media trains us to measure worth by numbers, likes, followers, views. Each glance at another's highlight reel becomes fuel for dissatisfaction. The sabotaging mind thrives in this environment, constantly comparing, constantly concluding, "I am not enough." Yet the Stoic response remains the same: withdraw from the crowd's measure. Marcus reminded himself, the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the truth. Applause is wind. Virtue is stone. Build your life on stone. Comparison also sabotages by distracting from what is in your control. You cannot control another's fortune, talent, or path. To obsess over them is to abandon your own. Epictetus urged his students to focus on their role like an actor in a play. Remember that you are an actor in a play, which is as the author chooses. To envy another's role is madness. Your task is to play yours well. The sabotaging mind wastes energy wishing for another's script. The disciplined mind plays its own part with excellence. The Stoics also saw comparison as corrosive to gratitude. When you measure life against others, you forget to see what is in your hand. Seneca said, "He is a great man who uses earthenware dishes as if they were silver, but he is equally great who uses silver as if it were earthenware." In other words, greatness lies not in what you possess, but in how you regard it. Comparison blinds you to sufficiency. Gratitude opens your eyes to abundance. How then can we train against this sabotage? First, by practicing indifference to reputation. This does not mean despising others, but refusing to let their opinions govern your choices. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." To live stoically is to reverse this error, to prize your own reason above the clamor of the crowd. Second, by redirecting comparison inward. Instead of asking, "Am I ahead of others?" ask, "Am I ahead of myself yesterday?" This is the only race that matters, for it is the only one you can win. Epictetus scolded his students who envied others' progress. If you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be a philosopher, think. Success is not stolen from others, it is built within. Third, by practicing voluntary humility. Seneca admired those who deliberately placed themselves among the poor, not to boast of sacrifice, but to train contentment. When you live simply, comparison loses its teeth. For what can envy touch when you are already content with little? To embrace less is to escape the trap of measuring yourself by more. Comparison sabotages not only ambition, but also peace. The man who envies never rests, for there is always someone richer, younger, stronger. The man who boasts never rests, for there is always the threat of someone overtaking him. Both are slaves. Only the Stoic, who measures himself by virtue alone, is free. Marcus Aurelius summed it with calm. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not upon your neighbor's wealth, nor your rival's praise, only your thoughts. Thus, the sixth Stoic insight is this: beware the noise of comparison, for it drowns out the voice of reason. To exist is to chase endlessly after others' shadows, to measure worth by applaud or envy. To live is to turn inward, to judge yourself by your own reason, to compete only with who you were yesterday. As Seneca warned, poverty lies not in possessions, but in craving. Comparison makes every man poor. Gratitude and virtue make every man rich. Of all the forms of sabotage, perhaps none is so insidious as self-doubt. Fear comes from outside threats, desire from outward cravings, comparison from external measures. But self-doubt rises from the very core of the mind, undermining every effort before it has a chance to grow. It is the voice that whispers, "You are not capable. You are not worthy. Others can, but not you." The Stoics, though living centuries ago, knew this voice well. They faced it not in the language of psychology, but in the language of philosophy, and their answer remains as sharp today as it was in Rome. Trust not your emotions, but your reason. Self-doubt sabotages success by paralyzing action. A man may possess skill, preparation, and opportunity, but if his judgment is clouded by distrust of himself, he will not act. Seneca condemned hesitation as a silent thief. While we deliberate, we are wasting time. He did not mean that reflection was useless. He himself was a master of careful thought, but that when reflection turns into endless second-guessing, it corrodes the will. The man who doubts himself endlessly cannot move, and in stillness, life passes him by. Marcus Aurelius faced this often. As emperor, burdened with decisions that affected millions, he could not afford paralysis. Yet in his private writings, he scolded himself for wavering. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. This principle gave him anchor, clarity not in outcome, but in action. He did not need to be certain of success to move. He needed only to be certain of virtue. Self-doubt thrives when success is measured by outcomes. It dissolves when success is measured by integrity. Epictetus offered another weapon against self-doubt: role acceptance. Remember that you are an actor in a play, which is as the author chooses. To him, doubt arises when we resist our role, wishing for one grander or safer. The student despairs because he is not yet a master. The soldier despairs because he fears he cannot endure. But Epictetus urged each to embrace his station fully, play your role with excellence, and let the outcome belong to fate. Doubt fades when you stop demanding mastery of the future and focus instead on fidelity to the present. Self-doubt also sabotages by disguising itself as humility. Many excuse inaction by claiming modesty. I do not believe I am good enough. But this is not humility. It is cowardice cloaked as virtue. True humility admits limitations while acting boldly within them. False humility avoids action altogether, pretending weakness to escape responsibility. Seneca admired men who admitted ignorance, yet still pursued wisdom. To him, the man who acts and errs is wiser than the man who doubts and never acts. The Stoics also diagnosed self-doubt as forgetfulness of reason. Emotions whisper chaos. Reason speaks clarity. Marcus reminded himself constantly that he was made for action, not paralysis. At dawn, when you rise unwillingly, have this thought: I am rising to do the work of a man. To him, hesitation was betrayal of nature. The mind sabotages itself when it forgets that its essence is rational, capable of judgment, action, and endurance. Doubt arises when reason abdicates and emotion reigns. Modern life feeds self-doubt in countless ways. We are bombarded with metrics of comparison, surrounded by curated illusions of perfection, trained to measure worth by performance and appearance. The sabotaging mind internalizes these messages, replaying them until they become identity. You are not enough. You are behind. Oh, you will fail. Against this chorus, Stoicism stands as rebellion. Epictetus urged his students to filter every impression. Is it true, or is it merely noise? Most self-doubt, when examined, dissolves into baseless noise. How can one resist? The Stoics prescribe discipline of thought. Seneca recommended nightly reflection, not to wallow in failure, but to remind himself of progress. When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day. He would ask, what did I do well? Where did I falter? Where can I improve tomorrow? This exercise transforms doubt into growth. Instead of I am worthless, the question becomes I can improve. Self-doubt thrives on vague condemnation. It dies in precise correction. Another Stoic practice was voluntary hardship. By enduring discomfort, willingly fasting, cold labor, the Stoics proved to themselves that they were stronger than their doubts. Epictetus reminded his students, difficulties show what men are. Every hardship endured becomes evidence against the whisper of incapacity. When the mind says, you cannot, the body replies, I already have. In this way, action builds confidence not through flattery, but through proof. Self-doubt also weakens when purpose strengthens. The man who lives only for applause will always doubt, for applause is fickle. The man who lives for virtue acts with steadiness, for virtue is always available. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. To ground worth in reason and virtue is to build on rock. To ground it in opinion is to build on sand. Doubt crumbles rock, but only if you mistake sand for stone. Thus, the seventh Stoic insight is this: beware the weight of self-doubt, for it is the heaviest chain the mind can forge. To exist is to let doubt paralyze, to surrender to whispers of weakness, to postpone life until confidence appears. To live is to act despite trembling, to ground worth in reason, to train strength through action. As Seneca wrote, while we delay, life speeds by. Do not let doubt waste your speed. Act, and let action itself prove your worth. If the sabotaging mind is fear, excuse, desire, comparison, or doubt, then the antidote is mastery. Mastery not of the world, but of yourself. The Stoics taught that true success is inner command. Fortune may grant or strip wealth, reputation, or health, but it cannot touch the disciplined mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the Stoic definition of victory, to remain sovereign within. The sabotaging mind thrives in disorder. It leaps from distraction to distraction, indulges cravings, flees from discomfort, bends under opinion. To counter this, the Stoics prescribe discipline. Not the grim discipline of punishment, but the liberating discipline of alignment. Epictetus compared philosophy to training in the gymnasium. The body grows strong through repeated effort. The mind grows strong through repeated reason. Without training, the body weakens. Without philosophy, the mind sabotages. What does mastery look like? It begins with attention. Seneca observed that most men are absent from their own lives, wandering in thought, scattering themselves across trivialities. He urged, "It is not that we have a short life, but that we waste much of it." Mastery begins by reclaiming presence, being where you are, attending to what is before you, refusing to live in fantasies of past or future. The sabotaging mind lives everywhere but here. The disciplined mind lives fully now. Next, mastery requires consistency. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to rise with purpose. At dawn, when you rise unwillingly, have this thought: I am rising to do the work of a man. To him, mastery was not occasional greatness, but daily fidelity. The sabotaging mind demands inspiration. The disciplined mind demands routine. Greatness is not born in bursts, but in steady repetition. To live stoically is to practice virtue, not when it is convenient, but always. Mastery also involves reframing failure. The sabotaging mind treats failure as proof of worthlessness. The disciplined mind treats failure as material for growth. Epictetus urged his students to treat every difficulty as training. Difficulties show what men are. When you stumble, ask, what virtue can I practice here? Patience, courage, humility. In this way, failure ceases to sabotage and begins to sculpt. The mind that sees every event as material for virtue cannot be defeated. Another aspect of mastery is moderation. Desire sabotages by scattering focus. Mastery responds with temperance. Seneca described temperance not as denial, but as proportion, enjoying what is available without being enslaved. He wrote, "Wealth is not his who has it, but his who enjoys it." To enjoy without dependence is mastery. The sabotaging mind craves endlessly. The disciplined mind chooses wisely. Mastery also requires solitude. The Stoics value time alone not as retreat, but as recalibration. Marcus found solitude in his journal, writing to himself as both student and teacher. Seneca advised withdrawing each day to examine the conscience. Epictetus insisted that philosophy required moments of separation from the crowd. The sabotaging mind dissolves in noise. The disciplined mind finds strength in reflection. Without solitude, excuses multiply, desires dominate, and doubt festers. With solitude, clarity sharpens, purpose anchors, and reason reigns. Yet mastery is not selfish. The Stoics insisted that living for oneself alone is a form of sabotage, for man is made for cooperation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "We are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids." Mastery means fulfilling your role in the whole, acting justly toward others, serving the common good, living not for vanity but for harmony. The sabotaging mind asks, "What will I gain?" The disciplined mind asks, "What is right?" In this shift lies true success. The highest mastery, however, is mastery over death. The fear of mortality sabotages countless lives, making men postpone, hesitate, and cling. The Stoics met death with calm. Seneca urged, "Rehearse death. To say this is to rehearse freedom." Marcus repeated, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Mastery means not conquering death, but stripping it of power by living fully before it arrives. The man who lives each day as complete cannot be sabotaged by the last. So we return to the question, is your mind sabotaging your success? The Stoics would answer that success is not riches, fame, or power. These belong to fortune, not to you. Success is reason, ruling passion, courage, ruling fear, virtue, ruling impulse. Success is the disciplined mind that acts justly today, without excuse, without delay. The sabotaging mind scatters, fears, envies, doubts. The disciplined mind chooses, endures, and lives. Thus, the eighth and final Stoic insight is this: the key to success lies not in conquering the world, but in conquering yourself. Train your mind, examine your judgments, embrace discomfort, release illusions, and act with virtue. Then, whatever fortune decrees, you cannot be defeated. For as Epictetus promised, no man is free who is not master of himself. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.